Why are young men so lonely? This is a question that we'll be trying to answer in today's video. If you are new to this channel, please subscribe, like, share if you can. Check out our other channels. We are doing Christian commentary. I found this video very interesting and I wanted to listen to it for the first time with you guys and actually react to it. It says, why are young men so lonely? This is very interesting.
There's an epidemic of depression among young men, and even the media recognizes this, but the solutions they provide are honestly crap. This is because the so-called experts really have no idea what a man is, or what a woman is for that matter, because modern people see humans as just elevated animals who want nothing more than their carnal desires. But this is not true at all.
Yeah, once you remove God from the equation, humans are reduced to nothing but animals with some form of intellect, at least some form of morality, at least, right? They are slightly advanced than animals, but they are still animals if you remove God from the equation. Because if you include God in the equation, then you know that we are more than just animals. We are made in the image and the likeness of God. We are the children of God, and as a result, we reflect His glory, we reflect His nature, we reflect His power. So that's actually a beautiful observation there.
Inside the heart of every man is a warrior. All men need something to fight for. Part of the reason why sports and video games are so popular among modern men is because there's not much for men to fight for in the real world, but men still look up to heroes and role models who fight for what they believe in. Why do you think men think about the Roman Empire so?
That's super true. I mean, most of you guys would relate if you're a guy watching this. After watching that superhero movie, you know, you'd think you're Hulk, you think you're Superman, right? It would stay with you. You would envision yourself as this invisible, powerful entity. You would think of yourself as a superhero. And that's why I think we enjoy like games, because there's that competitive nature in us, you know, where you want to win, where you want to dominate. So that's what actually makes us men. That's what actually makes us guys, right? But the world today says, tone it down a bit, relax, don't be too much of a guy. And I think this guy is onto something.
There's a reason the Bible refers to God in masculine terms, despite the fact that God has no gender according to his divine essence. It's because the Bible compares God to a mighty warrior, and men look up to mighty warriors. The Bible also says men are made with a desire to work, if that work is productive and creates great things. So
I think this is what makes us as guys. For me personally, I know if I'm not working towards something, if I'm not taking care of something, if I'm not nurturing something, right? If I'm not establishing, working, building something, even when it comes to my family, I feel a sense of not having purpose. I feel like I've lost purpose, right? I think what is derived for me being a guy, being a man, is when I see myself building, taking care of people, actually being in a place of a provider, protector. Right? I think it actually stems from just being a guy, just being a gent. These are some of the attributes that God instilled in us that make us who we are.
why are men struggling so much these days? Well, it's because men need two things, something to work for and something to fight for, and modern society gives them neither of those things. First of all, the school system is basically rigged against boys because it discourages boys from being boys. From a young age, boys are taught to sit on their butts for 8 hours a day, and if they don't like that, they're diagnosed with ADHD. Guys are discouraged from being creative, adventurous, or funny, so normal male behavior gets branded as bad, and boys...
That's super true. That's super true. I mean, I look at my boy. He likes running around. He likes jumping. You know, I've seen worse. I've seen a lot of boys, you know, some of them they like dominating and stuff. And it's a trait where I've seen like us as parents, sometimes we want to kill, or, you know, the child must sit still and stuff. I'm for order. I'm for all of that. But once you start to take those things out of a child, especially as a male child or a boy child, you're actually depriving them of what actually makes them a boy child. What actually makes them a boy is those attributes of wanting to run around, dominate, win, be competitive. Yours probably is just to hone those things in the right direction. But I think what we've done with the schooling system and how we often want things to work, we have taken the order that we want to see in our life and want to put it in our kids, that if I come back from work and I'm tired, I don't want a kid running around, jumping, being a kid, playing around, screaming. I just want you to sit still and be quiet and watch cartoons so that all of us can just be at peace. And I think it's not just the schooling system, it's the world system. We are constantly just trying to get the kids to sit down and be quiet and to focus. And that actually takes away from what makes them kids in the first place, but also with the boy child, that takes away from what actually makes them a boy child in the first place. So I think that's a beautiful observation.
End up being seen as second-rate girls, because schools tend to promote more feminine traits like being organized and following directions. That's why all those 20 highlighter girls, whose notes look like you could publish them in an art gallery, end up doing so much better in school, not because they're necessarily smarter than the guys, but because they're a lot better at doing the mindless busy work that teachers hand out, which is honestly just an excuse for teachers to not do any teaching. So men fall...
Exactly what I said, even with parents. If I can just give my child things that have to do with organizing and things that have to do with just them using their mind, then it means I can get some time off from parenting. I can just relax and be on my phone or just sleep. And this is also done in the schooling system. And it's also true. Girls are more organized. Girls kind of work in systems most of the time. And that's an attribute also that we should not take away, that God has given them. But things like humor, things like sports are not always rewarded at schools. In fact, many schools now don't pay much attention to sports anymore. Don't pay much attention to work done by hands anymore. Everything has to do with intellect and how you carry yourself and any form of humor, because most men are comedians even, and that's a very good profession. That is often killed and destroyed even in an early age, to say, yes, the kid is funny, but this being funny doesn't necessarily bring any excitement in terms of what we want our child to achieve. We want them to be a doctor, or we want them to be this and that, and actually takes away from them being the boy child that they're meant to be. And when we grow up and we become men, already we are suffering the consequences of those things that were instilled upon us from an early age of, you just have to be orderly, you just have to be quiet. But things that have to do with adventure, running, screaming, jumping, quiet down a bit, quiet down on those a bit. So I think it's true, it's evident.
Behind academically is one of the reasons that society gives them nothing to work for, but they also have nothing to fight for these days. Traditionally, the things men would fight for are their faith, family, and country, but modern society has abandoned all of these things. In terms of faith, Gen Z is the least religious generation in human history. It's also the most depressed generation in human history.
Makes sense.
That's why a lot of young men turn to political extremism, because they need something to believe in, but a lot of young men also believe in nothing and become nihilist, and they try to drown out their meaninglessness with marijuana, video games, and pornography.
Like, I'll be honest, faith gives you purpose. Before I got saved, the things that he just mentioned, things like smoking, games, and girls, were the main mantra. Those were the things that I prioritized. Those were the things that I used to kill time with. And again, killing time because I have nothing to do with my life. So once you remove the element of faith in anything or anyone, especially as a guy in this context, then you're opening them up to just waste away their life with entertainment, girls, fun, and stuff like that. There's no value attached to their life anymore. There's no sense of purpose attached to their life anymore. That brings focus, that brings direction, that brings that military mindset. Because as a guy, once you are saved, you just adopt this military mindset of just going out there and getting people and bringing them to the kingdom, right? You're just doing that work of a soldier, protecting people against the bad enemy and bringing them into the safe space. That's what faith in Jesus has given me. It has given me a sense of purpose and also a sense of direction, because I can testify, before I came to the faith, all these other things that he speaks about that are meant to be distractions, I was always found in them. And I think most guys can relate. Whether you are saved or not, you can relate that people or men that are saved often have a purpose, where else men who are not saved, we're not saying they don't have a purpose entirely. Some can be business and stuff like that, but majority of the guys, therefore, fall to just entertainment and just wasting away their life.
For family, back when the church had power in society and encouraged monogamy, most men were able to find a wife. Because you had one man assigned to every one woman, and there's about an equal number of men and women in the world, mathematically...
This also correlates why many people used to be married back then, like 20, 30, 40 years ago, right? Our parents and stuff like that. Most people used to value marriage. It's not just because people had nothing to do, but it's also based on the core values that were instilled in family, where men felt the need to establish a family so that their values can be expressed through their family, where a woman would want to be married because their sense of value could be expressed through marriage. Like there was this beautiful attachment that they also had, that my value, I am valuable, yes, but I can also express my value even more within the confinements of a healthy family. And this is something we don't see in our modern day times. There's no priority anymore from guys of like establishing a family, seeing your kids grow, seeing them achieve success, seeing you perform at your optimum level as a guy who cares, protects, and just fights for his family. This correlates. It makes complete sense why people back then used to be married than now.
Everyone's going to find someone. But ever since the church's authority declined and was replaced by hookup culture, now we've kind of reverted to a prehistoric...
The increase of hookup culture then decreased the need of being married, because why must I be married if, I benefit the same way as the married guy does?
Model of polygamy, where a few men get all the women and the rest of the men don't get any. Either way, it's really hard for the average man to start a family. For country, this country has spent the past 20 years telling men that they're the oppressor, which kind of explains why men are not too keen to fight for their country anymore. Now back in the day...
So this guy is an American, right? He's speaking about America, but this can also be broad within the South African context. That most of us, I'll be honest, I'll speak for myself, most of us are not attracted to serving our country in terms of military or anything else, even if it's not on the military spectrum, but there's no sense of instilling this desire as a young man to serve your country, to want to serve your country, to be willing to die for your country. That is not instilled in us. What is instilled in us is individualism, to be individuals that succeed on their own, not to succeed as a corporate. And people who are often installed in that place where they have to serve the country often take care of themselves. So this trickles down to the young boy who grows up seeing no value in serving their country, no value in the flag, no value in what keeps the country going, because even the country itself does not hold daily to the values that they seem to have made available for people to know. Everyone just lives their lives, and public servants also ensure that they line their pockets. And as a result, we are bringing boys who have no sense of service. They just live lives that are completely selfish and individualistic.
What gave men something to work for and something to fight for the oppressor, which kind of explains why men are not too keen to fight for their country anymore. Now back in the day, what gave men something to work for and something to fight for was the church, specifically the Protestant churches, and I'll explain why. First of all, the Protestant work ethic, which of course the left says is racist, says that you should work as hard as possible because you're glorifying God and doing so by building up his kingdom, and that's why historically Protestant men built the most successful societies to ever exist, and to this day the most developed countries are the historically Protestant ones. Now, all religion could give people...
I mean, that's true. I remember where I was reading about Luther and from the Lutheran Church, and they were the people that were actually driving this whole narrative of Christians being involved in secular work, Christians being just hardworking people, right? And even these denominations produce many scholars, produce many people that we regard as scholars, because there's this attitude and there's this mantra of being a hard worker when you come from these denominations. So that's also a very powerful observation, that when you remove church, especially churches that emphasize on hard work, being a scholar, being educated and stuff like that, we find ourselves then also being moved away from the sense of purpose, because church used to instill that. Yes, it used to instill that you need to achieve this level as a man, you need to be a scholar, you need to more or less be a nerd in terms of you need to know even the fundamentals of your faith. You need to be invested in your faith. You need to investigate. You need to be out there preaching the gospel. People need to see you living this gospel. But now there's little emphasis on that. And that's why a lot of men, even in the church, just go by their days just being themselves and not necessarily gripped by any greater purpose above themselves.
Something to fight for, but Protestantism specifically has this doctrine called the priesthood of all believers, which is that it's the job of every individual believer to be a soldier for God's kingdom by sharing the good news about Jesus. And of course, Protestantism isn't the only form of Christianity, but I do believe it's been most successful in accomplishing the mission of Christianity, and it puts the most emphasis on personally believing and understanding that Jesus Christ died for your sins and rose again from the dead, and through him you can be raised from the dead as well. So if young men band together and do a crusade to restore the institutional churches, it'll do a few things. First of all, it's going to completely solve the male loneliness epidemic.
Yeah.
You know, it used to be completely unheard of for people to not have friends, because everyone's community was through the local church.
Yeah.
But ever since the decline of the local church, it's been very common for men to have no in-real-life friends.
This makes sense. We don't even have to. What he's saying is completely true. This makes sense. Church used to be community, and the busyness and the expectations, a lot of things happening, and not the business because there's just this one person who's saying people must be at church every day. No, everyone had roles to play. There were so many things to be achieved, and there was no time to be on yourself. Right? You were just involved in this community. You were part of this community, and you would serve this community. So it's true what he's saying.
Number two, it'll give men something to fight for. We all know that men bond with each other over going on an adventure and having some cause to be passionate about.
Yeah.
And number three, it will save the souls of people in Generation Z. You know, Christianity isn't just good because it's useful. It's good because it's objectively true, and because it delivers a message that saves people from eternal death and grants them eternal life. And eternal life is something that Generation Z desperately needs right now. And finally, reviving the institutional church will make the culture better for both young men and young women, because it's going to rebuild strong families and communities that are centered around.
Yeah, Generation Z has a lot of challenges that I think the generations before them didn't necessarily face. Obviously, the generation before them had difficult challenges, but this generation, there's so much as well, so much confusion, so much distortion, depression, anxiety, a lot of medication. There's just so many things that this generation struggles with, that the best thing that can ever happen to them is if they were to surrender their lives to Jesus. The saving grace of Jesus is what this generation needs.
Common purpose. So if you're looking to explore a Christian community, I made a map of historic Protestant churches all around the world, so you can find a Protestant church close to you.
That's so cool.
Now these days, a lot of Protestant churches are either ugly or liberal, but I made sure that every church on my map is both traditional in terms of teaching and in terms of style. The bottom line is, if you're a young man in today's world, the culture rejects you, but Jesus does not.
Yeah.
So join the church and find something to believe in.
Oh man, this is so good. This is so good. Young men, go to church. This is the best thing that's the best thing you can ever do. The sense of community, finding like-minded Christians, and building that brotherhood, that sense of family and fellowship, that is very key. That is very important. So I wanted to watch this video with you guys. Beautiful takeaways from it. May God bless you. May God keep you until the next video. Grace and peace.